to Search the Scriptures today. We are on study number 2 in the book of 1 Kings, and this study covers chapter number 2. And we today will attempt to answer two different sets of questions from 1 Kings chapter 2. The first one is this: enumerate the points that David made in his final advice to his son Solomon. David's preparing to die in this chapter. The second question: how and why were Adonijah, Joab, and Shimei put to death? And Solomon's own reaction was to let bygones be bygones, but David counseled him against this, and Solomon reacted accordingly. What do you think was David's motive in giving the counsel that he did? And what lessons can we learn from Adonijah's life story? Just to recap here, Adonijah is another son of David from chapter 1 that tried to assume the throne. Solomon instead was placed onto the throne by David because of an encounter with Bathsheba and Nathan, Bathsheba being Solomon's mother. So Solomon is now on the throne. David is preparing to die. He's giving his son some last advice before he passes away. Now let's look at 1 Kings chapter number 2 together, beginning with the very first verse. When the time drew near for David to die, he gave a charge to Solomon his son. I am about to go the way of all the earth, he said. Be strong, act like a man, and observe what the Lord your God requires. Walk in obedience to him, keep his decrees and his commands, his laws and regulations, as written in the law of Moses. Do this so that you may prosper in all that you do and wherever you go, and that the Lord may keep his promise to me. And that promise was, if your descendants watch how they live, and if they walk faithfully before me with all their heart and soul, you will never fail to have a successor on the throne of Israel. Now you yourself know what Joab son of Zeruiah did to me, what he did to the two commanders of Israel's armies, Abner son of Ner and Amasa son of Jether. He killed them, shedding their blood in peacetime, as if in battle, and with that blood he stained the belt around his waist and sandals of his feet. Deal with him according to your wisdom, but do not let his gray head go down to the grave in peace. But show kindness to the sons of Barzillai of Gilead, and let them be among those who eat at your table. They stood by me when I fled from your brother Absalom. And remember, you have with you Shimei, son of Gerer, the Benjamite from Bahurim, who called down bitter curses on me the day I went to Mahanaim. When he came down to meet me at the Jordan, I swore to him by the Lord, I will not put you to death by the sword. But now do not consider him innocent. You're a man of wisdom, and you'll know what to do to him. Bring his gray head down to the grave in blood. Then David rested with his ancestors and was buried in the city of David. He had reigned 40 years over Israel, 7 years in Hebron and 33 in Jerusalem. So Solomon sat on the throne of his father David, and his rule was firmly established. Now Adonijah, the son of Haggith, went to Bathsheba, Solomon's mother. Bathsheba asked him, Do you come peacefully? He answered, Yes, peacefully. Then he added, I have something to say to you. You may say it, she replied. As you know, he said, the kingdom was mine, and all Israel looked to me as their king. But things changed, and the kingdom has gone to my brother, for it's come to him from the Lord. Now I have one request to make of you. Don't refuse me. You can make it, she said. So he continued, Please ask King Solomon, he won't refuse you, to give me Abishag the Shunammite as my wife. King David's electric blanket, so to speak. Verse 18, Very well, Bathsheba replied, I will speak to the king for you. And when Bathsheba went to King Solomon to speak to him for Adonijah, the king stood up to meet her, bowed down to her, and sat down on his throne. He had a throne brought to for the king's mother, and she sat down at his right hand. I have one small request to make of you, she said. Don't refuse me. The king replied, Make it, my mother, I will not refuse you. So she said, Let Abishag the Shunammite be given in marriage to your brother Adonijah. King Solomon answered his mother, "Why do you request Abishag the Shunammite for Adonijah? You might as well request the kingdom for him. After all, he's my older brother. Yes, for him and for Abiathar the priest and Joab son of Zeruiah." Then King Solomon swore by the Lord, "May God deal with me, be it ever so severely, if Adonijah does not pay with his life for this request. And now as surely as the Lord lives, he who has established me securely on the throne of my father David, and has founded a dynasty for me as he promised, Adonijah shall be put to death today." So King Solomon gave orders to Benaiah son of Jehoiada, and he struck down Adonijah, and he died. To Abiathar the priest the king said, "Go back to your fields in Anathoth. You deserve to die, but I will not put you to death now, because you carry the ark of the sovereign Lord. You carried the ark of the sovereign Lord before my father David and shared all my father's hardships." So Solomon removed Abiathar from the priesthood of the Lord. He defrocked him, in other words, fulfilling the word of the Lord that was spoken at Shiloh about the house of Eli. And when the news reached Joab, who had conspired with Adonijah, not with Absalom, he fled to the tent of the Lord and took hold of the horns of the altar. King Solomon was told that Joab had fled to the tent of the Lord and was beside the altar. Then Solomon ordered Benaiah son of Jehoiada, "Go strike him down." So he entered the tent of the Lord, and he said to Joab, "The king says, 'Come out.' But he answered, 'No, I will die here.' Benaiah reported to the king, 'This is how Joab answered me.' And the king said to Benaiah, 'Well, do as he says. Strike him down and bury him, and so clear me and my whole family for the guilt of the innocent blood that Joab shed. The Lord will repay him for the blood he shed. Because without my father David knowing it, he attacked 2 men and killed them with the sword, both of them, Abner son of Ner, commander of Israel's army, and Amasa son of Jether, commander of Judah's army, were better men and more upright than he. May the guilt of their blood rest on the head of Joab and his descendants forever. But on David and his descendants, his house and his throne, may there be the Lord's peace forever." So Benaiah son of Jehoiada went up and struck down Joab and killed him, and he was buried at his home in the country. The king put Benaiah son of Jehoiada over the army in Joab's position, and replaced Abiathar with Zadok the priest. Then the king sent for Shimei and said to him, "Build yourself a house in Jerusalem and live there, but don't go anywhere else. The day you leave and cross the Kidron Valley, you can be sure you will die. Your blood will be on your own head." So this is kind of like an ankle bracelet, okay? He's in home confinement in Jerusalem. Verse 38, Shimei answered the king, "What you said is good. Your servant will do as my lord the king has said." And Shimei stayed in Jerusalem for a long time. But 3 years later, 2 of Shimei's slaves ran off to Achish, son of Micaiah, king of Gath. And Shimei was told, "Your slaves are in Gath." At this he saddled his donkey and went to Achish at Gath in search of his slaves. So Shimei went away and brought the slaves back from Gath. And when Solomon was told that Shimei had gone from Jerusalem to Gath and had returned, the king summoned Shimei and said to him, "Didn't I tell you, swear by the Lord and warn you, on the day you leave to go anywhere else, you can be sure you will die? At that time you said to me, 'What you say is good, I will obey.' So why then did you not keep your oath to the Lord and obey the command that I gave you?" The king also said to Shimei, "You know in your heart all the wrong you did to my father David. Now the Lord will repay you for your wrongdoing. But King Solomon will be blessed, and David's throne will remain secure before the Lord forever." Then the king gave the order to Benaiah son of Jehoiada, and he went out and struck Shimei down, and he died. And the kingdom was now established in Solomon's hands. Question 1. Enumerate the points that David made in his final advice to his son Solomon. Well, David begins in the opening verse by telling Solomon what he must do. He must cling to God's law. And then he focuses on what he must distance himself from. In particular, Joab and Shimei. These guys are trouble, and they need to be dealt with for their insubordination towards the king. Question 2, how and why were Adonijah, Joab, and Shimei put to death? Solomon's own reaction was, let bygones be bygones. Learned that from his dad, probably. But David counseled him against this, and Solomon acted accordingly. What do you think was David's motive in giving him that counsel, and what lessons can we learn from Adonijah's death. Well, Solomon had Adonijah killed for his request for the hand of Abishag. Now, this request infuriated Solomon. Remember, this is the young gal that was brought in to serve kind of as David's electric blanket to keep him warm. Why was he so upset that he made this request for this young girl? I mean, if you think about it, his anger really makes perfect sense. This gal never left the presence of the aging king. She had top security clearance. She knew everything. It's like that, little maid at the White House that's over there polishing the silver in the Oval Office when heads of state are coming in. Nobody notices or pays any attention to her, but she hears everything. That was what it was like for Abishag. She would have been a top secret weapon in an arsenal against Solomon and his throne. And Solomon immediately had Adonijah killed because there was evil in his heart. Remember what he said previously, you will not die unless there is evil found in you. Well, he found the evil and he killed him. He also then banished Abiathar the priest from the priesthood, and he confined Shimei under house arrest with an ankle bracelet, so to speak, had to remain in Jerusalem upon penalty of death, which he left, and that penalty was carried out. And he had Joab killed, commander of David's army, while he was still clinging to the horns of the altar at the tent of the Lord. Now, David had made the mistake of putting things off, and he didn't want Solomon to inherit his mess or his way of dealing with things. So Solomon wisely heeded the counsel of his father David, and he was able to start with a clean slate, as the last verses of this chapter mentioned, establish his kingdom. The story of Adonijah reminds us that we should never assume position in God's kingdom on our own. We need to place everything in the hands of the Lord. The Lord directs the footsteps of the righteous. If those steps lead to a position of authority and power, so be it. But we must be equally content if the Lord directs our steps in a manner that lead us to a position of service on the sidelines. Exalting ourselves is never a good idea. We need to have the Lord be the one that is exalting us. I hope this study's been a blessing to you today. Hope you're having a great day so far. May God richly bless the rest of your day.